Call to order the City Council for the City of Wyoming, Minnesota, November 3rd, 2021, and we're starting at 7:20 p.m. Let the record reflect, we do have a quorum. Member Yeager, Member Onstad, Member Luger, and Mayor Iverson are present. Member Schilling is absent. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For those in the audience, I'm sorry we got started late. Thanks for being here. We will start with open forum. Open forum is an opportunity for members of the public to address the City Council on items that are on or are not on the current agenda. Items requiring council action may be deferred to staff or boards and commissions for research and future council agendas if appropriate. You will be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask that you conduct yourself in a professional, courteous manner, and please refrain from the use of profanity. Failure to abide by this policy may result in the loss of your privilege to speak. Do we have anybody here who wants to come up and speak? Okay, come on, John. Please state your name and address.
Let me turn that on.
People from out of town and some people I know in town that want to bring some around to spray the weeds over next door here at the library.
At the library?
I told them at the rainforest.
Yep.
They said, no, it's a weed patch.
Uh-oh.
And they said, what? I said, you want to know why we got so many weeds right downtown?
Yep.
And they said, well, I'll bring it up. I said, I want to bring it on a few people.
Yep. Appreciate that. All right. Mr. Linwin, can we have a discussion? Tonight's probably not appropriate, but who really takes care of that and what we need to do, or do we need to get some volunteer, like?
Yeah, I know we usually have some volunteers in the community that take care of it, but I know there's probably some maybe confusion in regards to what's weeds and what's wildflowers.
Yeah.
And,
I know, I
like
don't
that,
know.
So.
So, yeah.
I have the map, but
I would clear it all, put smoke just like that there.
there's a question of a grant, and I don't know how long the grant is for. That, all that stuff was put in with a grant. And, no, when I planted them, they were real nice plants. But it was, and we were told that, you know, once it got established, it would be a nice naturalistic, we can do classes and all that in there. Yeah, I know, right? You would have to find out what the terms of the grant was, because it may be you had to have it in for a certain amount of time before you can spray Roundup on it.
Yeah. We can do some digging, staff can, to see if there's any, if we can find the grant or what, if there was a duration of time that it
You would
be.
you'd look at WALS, Wyoming Area Library Society,
Okay.
and the head of that. From what I understand, they haven't quite formally disbanded. They've been inactive, but because the Friends of the Library, we're trying to keep it up. It got, it's too big for us. So we went to WALS to see if they would, said, you guys got to take it over and take care of it. In the past, they had gotten some other kind of volunteers to come in and clean it all out, but it's like a humongous, and especially the back where it's supposed to be all grasses, yeah.
Okay. So, Mr. Linwood, you'll
Yeah, we can do some checking to
report
see
back on that.
if we've complied with the grant or what that duration is. And I think our council member is right, that sometimes there is characteristics of those grants where they have to be there for so long, so.
Thanks, John. All right. Dan, are you coming up to speak?
Well, is this the right time to do the street feedback, or do I wait until that?
The street feedback, no, we'll do that during the public hearing. Is that okay? Perfect. Anybody else want to come up and speak for open forum? No? All right, we'll move on to approval of minutes, which is number 1 on the agenda. Consider approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for October 19th, 2021. If there are no comments or changes, do we have a motion to approve?
I think my name was after one of my comments.
She?
Yeah.
Yeah, he. So
Oh, no,
Yeah.
noted.
we can get those for you.
Councilmember,
It's
yeah,
within the
Councilmember
first-
Ronstadt, do you know what page that's on? I'll find it, change it.
I think it was on the third page of.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that change, do we have a motion to approve?
So,
We have a motion to approve by member Onstad. Do we have a second?
second?
No, you're first. And
Oh, I
member
got first.
Luker is
Oh.
second. All right.
I heard her voice over
Yeah.
mine.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so approved. We are going into schedule of the public hearing. We will need a motion to go into into the public hearing. Do we have a motion to?
So moved.
We have a motion by member Onstad. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by member Luker. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are in the public hearing. We'll start with number 2 on the agenda for the public hearing to consider Resolution 21-11-107, a resolution adopting assessments for the 2021 street improvement project. Mr. Linwood, will you start with that, and then we'll have residents
Correct,
addressed?
we'll have a brief presentation from Mr. Erickson just to kind of surmise that project and then allow residents the opportunity to speak on behalf of the project in the public hearing.
Mr. Erickson, you would think I would have this down by now. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As Mr. Linwood had stated, I have just a brief PowerPoint to kind of summarize the project and the costs and the assessment process, and certainly open that up for public comment following. Mr. Linwood, if you could move on to the next slide. Again, this is the assessment hearing for the 2021 street improvement project. I'll just highlight again the public improvement process. We kind of just did that for a different project, right? And so this is standard for all of our improvement projects. The assessment project process, the project location, existing conditions, the improvements that were made. We'll highlight the project costs and the funding sources. We'll touch on assessments and the financing, project schedule, at which time we can see if there's any questions from council, and then open the public comment session. And then ultimately, city council would discuss whether or not to adopt the assessments or table for a future meeting. Next slide. This is the public improvement process. I know I shared this at our informational meetings with property owners. We're kind of at the tail end here now. We're at the bottom right, where we are holding the assessment hearing this evening in adopting the assessment role, at which time those get certified to the county. There will be a little bit more detail that I'll share about prepayment and if they're not prepaying, what options, how that unfolds and how that would ultimately be paid for by property owners. The assessment process is governed by state statutes, chapter 429. It's a very detailed process that highlights really the two main hearings, the public hearing that we review the feasibility study, we hear from property owners and determine whether or not to move forward with the project, and then we have the assessment hearing. The city has elected to move forward with a much more rigorous process than what's governed by statute, and we have a lot of public informational meetings and mailers and things of that nature to keep property owners engaged and informed about the project, and certainly to get feedback about what should be included in the project. So this evening, as part of that process, this evening, written objection appeal must be presented in writing and signed by the property owner prior to or at the meeting. So if there's anybody inclined to appeal their assessment, that needs to be written this evening. I think Mr. Linwood may have one, is that correct? Or is it questions?
To Mr. Erickson,
Two,
the
okay.
council has been provided with those two.
Okay, thank you. Following that, notice of appeal must be filed with Chisago County within 30 days after the adoption of the assessment. And of course, with the interest, with the assessment amount, if it's not prepaid, there is an interest rate of 4%. And that has been pretty steady for quite a few of our last projects.
The interest rate is based off the 10-year treasury rate, which is approximately 1.55%, and then we had 2.5% on that. So that has been the standard, unless sometimes it differs with our bonding process.
All right, next slide, please. I think we're all familiar with the project location, kind of highlighted in red there. You can see the list of street names. I won't go through all of them, but Pretty robust project. We've handled a lot of our roadways here, multiple miles of roadway that we were able to complete this year. And there'll be a little bit of work that carries into next year with restoration. We have certainly some dormant seeding that has occurred that's not growing, and we'll want to make sure that that is all in fine shape before we accept the improvements and make final payment to contractors. So there will be some minor carryover punch list items. We're still going to continue to work on as many of those as we can yet this year, but there will be some carryover work, and primarily really kind of watching and making sure that that restoration and the vegetation is coming in and meets our specification. Next slide. Existing conditions, I think we were all aware of the condition of the roadways. There's awfully a lot of work by Public Works just to keep them in shape to the point that they were. We were able to move forward with a reclamation type improvement, but there's some photos here that just kind of shows the condition. Certainly they don't do it justice. A lot of the conditions were really covered by chip seals and a lot of Band-Aids, if you will, over the years. The assessed improvements are surface improvements, the bituminous pavement replacement, road widths try to match the existing, but focus on really a consistent pavement width and consistent and defined curve radii. So there's some instances where the roadway is 22 feet on one portion, 23 feet on another portion, and we found a happy medium. Oftentimes it may be the 22 feet because we had pretty steep ditches and we wanted to make sure that we didn't widen the roadway, or if we're changing grade, for instance, we want to make sure that those ditches were not made any worse considering we were raising the roadway in some cases. We also modified some of the curves, so it might have pushed away from somebody's property a little bit, or it may have gotten a little bit closer, just to make sure that we're trying to meet some level of standards when we replace the roadway. And the grades of the roadway, for the most part, matched pretty closely. We did make some modifications to make sure that we were able to address some drainage concerns and try to meet, again, some horizontal or some vertical profile of road standards. Next slide. Again, drainage improvements were relatively minor. We did replace the roadway culverts. We, on occasion, there's a couple of instances where we needed to make some modifications to the ditch that also then necessitated making a driveway culvert repair. Typically, we don't do those unless that is the case where our road project actually caused a change in alignment or elevation of a ditch. And so there's very little of that, but we did remove and replace the existing road culverts and actually improved some of those to meet a little bit better standards as well. There was some additional storm sewer in a couple of minor locations that we've had really problematic drainage problems, and so we've looked to extend that and corrected some areas there so we don't have year in and year out issues. Again, those were relatively minor. And again, we did have a couple of locations where we did have some isolated curb and gutter added to really address some issues that really couldn't be corrected without the curb and gutter. Related to items that were not assessed, we did have some water main improvements. We replaced hydrants and valves that were not functioning or causing the city public works staff some issues. We did install some new valves to make sure that we had some ability to isolate water main if there's a break or we have future construction. We don't shut off mass neighborhoods. We're able to really try to isolate that. So we did install some new gate valves. Sanitary sewer, there was some spot repairs that were done trenchlessly. And then we did have some inflow and infiltration through some of the top sections of the manholes that we corrected as well to reduce water going into the sewer and essentially paying Chisago Lakes Joint Sewer Treatment Commission to treat rainwater, right? So we wanted to avoid that as well. Those are all improvements that were made that are not assessed. Those are things, again, that are not assessed. So really kind of just a graphical representation of what was completed. In some cases, there were not ditches, but in some cases there were. Again, just really the width varied, but we did stick with our standard street section with really 4 inches of asphalt, two 2-inch lifts. And so we're very pleased with what has occurred thus far. Again, the contractor does have some work remaining to be completed. It's really hard to see there, but you can see most of the roadways were completed at a width of 22 feet. We did have one that was at about 20 feet in width. And so that was really pretty closely matching with what the existing streets were. In some cases, they were a little bit narrower. In some cases, they were a little bit wider as well, but we do have consistent street widths moving forward. Here are just some photos of the improvements. You can see with the roadway being paved. This is an area that was pretty early on where you can see actually some of the restoration coming in with the green grass, but we do have some other photos here as we go along just to kind of highlight what the project looks like now. Freshly paved. Another photo here, more of the closer to the downtown area. Again, freshly paved and looking to be in good working order. I know Public Works staff is probably thrilled to not have to patch these any longer, right, Chuck? Project costs. You can see the total on the right for surface improvements, 1.374 million. We look at 20% of that as being assessed, totaling that 274,812.71. You can see schedules B and C, both the water main and sanitary sewer. There are no assessments tied to those improvements, and then the drainage improvements totaling 280,000 roughly. And again, am I reading that? All right, 280,000. And then 20% assessed is total of 56,000, just over 56,000 for that. So that really totals our assessments at just over $330,000. Next slide, Mr. Linwood. Again, that 330,000 is that 20% assessed. And again, when we look at assessments, we're basing that on a unit basis, not on a front footage basis. And so we looked at and evaluated all the accessible properties within the project. Again, your property, it would have to have the driveway accessing the roadway that was improved. And so we base that on a one unit. We do have some apartments that are on the project. Those are at 0.25 units. We do have a max of 2.5 units per apartment complex for our assessment policy. So just wanted to quick highlight those. And then the city funds pay the remaining 80% of the project cost plus the sewer and the water improvements. So the total assessable project cost I referenced at $330,000. We had a total of 121.5 units. Again, that 0.5, you might wonder why that is. Again, that's at that 2.5 units for the apartment building. And so the $330,939.86 divided by the total number of units resulted in an assessment per unit of $2,723.78. So generally on the lower side of what we typically see for assessments on our road improvement projects. And that's primarily because it's a little bit more densely populated area. Assessments are proposed to be paid over a 10-year period with an interest rate of 4%. A couple of options that we have. Property owners, if they choose to pay the assessments in full prior to 30 days going by from this evening, they can do so without any interest being accrued. If they choose not to pay off in full in advance, it would be applied directly to their property tax statements, and that's why we certify the assessments to Chisago County. And that, again, is automatic if option number 1 with the prepay is not exercised. Just a general assessment payback table. The county will ultimately provide that. This is just an example of what that would look like. We provided the numbers over a 10-year period and what that would be here for just so you can have an idea what to expect. Next slide, Mr. Linwood. Project schedule. Again, we are at the tail end. We just had a neighborhood meeting before this meeting where we're at the very front end, and now we've kind of worked through that process here, and we're at the assessment hearing. Again, we'll have opportunity for property owners to ask questions or voice their concerns related to the process or project or costs. So next slide, Mr. Linwood.
Okay.
Any questions from council? And other than that, we can certainly open that up for residents.
Okay, Mr. Babbitt, would you like to come up first? Okay, great. We'll get you started.
Just a real quick question, where do we send the check?
The city of Wyoming.
City of Wyoming, okay.
Yep.
So,
State your name and address.
Dan Babbitt, 26200 Glen Oak Drive, beautiful Wyoming. I guess after every big project I ever worked on, I always kind of did a good and a bad and an ugly, or, what you need to first of all, I wanna say I'm really thankful, my street's fixed, it's really nice, I really appreciate it. I think, the Forest Lake, I can't remember the name, Forest Lake Contracting, or whatever. They did a really nice job. My wife's going through some health issues and she has mobility issues at times, excuse me, coming home from doctor's appointments, throwing a pile of dirt in front of her driveway, and they didn't just walk to tell somebody, the kid ran and got the guy with the deal and moved the dirt for it. Like it. They were always friendly and talkative, and then, Mr. Erickson's been very responsive. He's heard from me a few times, call, text, and voicemail, and he's been very responsive, and even tonight, he gave me a little update, so I appreciate that. And the needs improvement, and it comes from my project management days, I guess. I think, well, the first one was the scope. So when we had that first call you were referencing on November 4th, the question was asked, why are we stopping on 262nd, not at an intersection? And I think somebody said, well, we're doing the same thing at 263rd, but that's an intersection. And you were gonna get back to me, or back to us. I don't think I was the one to ask the question, but it's really easy to come up with reasons of why you're not gonna do something after you've already decided and presented something. That would have been something to have, this is why we're not doing that, right away. The other really big thing is the culvert that goes under the road between, other places across the street, and me and my wife and Dan and Lisa Landiger is way bigger than the one that was there before. And, that's where we started our communication, and Mr. Erickson said that, it had to be that big for a 100-year flood. If he's right, for my project management thing, whenever you're gonna make major changes to somebody that's gonna affect somebody, you wanna communicate to them ahead of time. Let them know that, hey, this is gonna really affect you, because the culvert line, we got 18 inches below where the ground was before. And we never heard from them. If it's what we heard from the guys on the street, that it was a mistake, it was ordered and it was too big, and they couldn't get the right size one until January, February, whatever. Everything I ever learned about project management is you share good news fast and you share bad news even faster. I don't know what it is. I'm not an engineer. 100-year flood can cover a lot of things, but either way, nobody said anything to us, Landerhers, or Dave and Jane Boniface. I made the call. You came out in the rain. We looked at it, and we were promised it was going to get fixed. And it's, to this date, it's still not fixed. That was the update I got today. They're still working on it. But I just think if you're going to, the engineers should have been able to tell when they did that, if it's the correct size, that it was going to be a big issue. And when it got put in, it was obvious it was way bigger than the one that was before, and it was a big problem. Nobody protected us. One other thing, I guess, and you never said it, but your guy that works with you did, and we heard that often, was not to talk to the workers because they don't know what they're doing. Somebody that had 30 years of restaurant retail experience, that's who you talk to first. They know what's going on. And so that kind of, and then to tell when you're watching people with this big equipment and told not to pay attention or not to listen to them, know what they're doing, doesn't give you a really good feeling. Last thing for the council, I'm just kind of curious, when people build, like on the west side, they're building those houses and they have the black tarp to keep when it rains, to keep the dirt from going all over. Why don't we do that on the roads? Because on our road was all dug up, and we had that really heavy rainfall at the end of July. There were brown streams going between all the yards going into the pond or into Ashton. And I'm curious why we don't do something like that, because that was a massive amount. I guess my last request is, I really trust them, but I would really like it if some money got withheld until that drainage between our ditch got fixed, so. I guess that's all I got. Thank you
All
for
right,
your time.
thank you, we appreciate it. Mr. Erickson, you can get back to us on some of those comments and questions?
Yeah, and I can certainly answer some of them right now, and I may be mistaken, but I'm pretty confident when we had the second informational meeting, there was a discussion again about why we're stopping where we're stopping, right? And we've talked a little bit about the different type of improvements. That's gonna be a mill and overlay improvement. We are strapped with finances right now for the project, so we've had a number of discussions, but that is tied to a future project, and it's in our capital improvements plan that will be a future year project with not a reclamation type project, but it's gonna be a mill and overlay type project. And so I'm pretty confident that was discussed at our second neighborhood meeting. I'm not sure, maybe you weren't at that meeting?
No, I was on the first one. You said you were gonna get back to us, and then it was covered on the second one.
Yep.
That's on, I guess.
So a call rather than the meeting, okay, I understand. So,
Yeah, so if it's, well, I don't know, we were doing public meetings at the time, because I think we were still in the COVID deal. But, so it was all online. I just remember from my project stuff, if the people that were paying for the project, they had questions for me, and I didn't know the answer. I didn't make that mistake very often. It's uncomfortable. So
okay.
It's just a learning thing. I'm not upset about it, I'm just saying it's a learning thing.
sure, I can appreciate that. So we felt we did, but I think you wanted it direct, and I apologize for that. Certainly, we'll handle that. Regarding payment, the contractor will not be paid in full, and this is not at all tied to the road improvement project. There'll be payment withheld for work that's not completed. There's also a 5% retainage on the project as well. We may reduce that retainage because it's a lot to carry through for the contractor, but we will certainly keep well in hand of all of the work that's remaining. Plus, we have a performance bond in place. That work will be completed. There's restoration that's gonna be needed to be looked at, and there will be additional restoration work that's completed next year. And so we absolutely will not pay for the restoration work that is not vegetated and grown, as well as the retainage that we keep on all of our contracts until we receive final completion. All punch list items are completed, and all they have provided their IC 134. There's a laundry list of items that they need to provide. That will not take place until probably next June or July, I would guess. So,
Mr. Babbitt, can I ask one question, though? You brought up the fact that there was a worker or workers who said, don't talk to them, or can you just tell me? 'Cause
and I
that's
can
a
elaborate on it, because
concern.
we've had a conversation, I think, a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And so it actually stems from the conversation that Mr. Babbitt had with a contractor that said, it's a screw up, it's the wrong size pipe, when we can't get the right one until February, or whatever it was, right? That is in error, right? I mean, on the plan, it shows the size pipe, and it's the size pipe that was constructed. And so I think the person had indicated, like, try not to, have conversations with the worker who does no idea about the drainage design or the size of the pipe or why it is the size, but it actually is the size that's shown on our construction plans, and they did order it correctly and construct it correctly. Now, there's some more communication about change in elevation, and it was in a public drainage utility easement, and so that's why Mr. Babbitt and I and his neighbor Dan had met out on site in a rainstorm, right? And Dan was nice enough to share his umbrella with me, but it did work out fine. There's still some things that we've been hounding the contractor to get to, and it does drain out, but it needs to be correct. There's still a little bit of ponding right near the culvert, and so the contractor is responsible to get that. We've probably reminded them at least 20 times, but it's not their highest priority, and it's not our highest priority for them to do that either, but it will be corrected. We would love to have them on it and have it done it right away, but the important part was getting the roads paved, and I can understand their prioritization, but I wish they had additional staff where they could have just thrown them at it
Yeah.
and got that taken care of.
Mr. Babbitt?
Well, I'm just gonna say, those guys are the ones that have their hands on the work all the time. When they put a pipe in, it's that much bigger than the one that was there before, and it's that much different in elevation. It's possible the person who scoped that ordered the wrong size pipe. Yeah, the one that they got ordered, you got spec, and you got ordered, and it's the one that.
No, that's a great question, and I'm thankful that you asked, and I stopped out and verified, right? But it is the correct size. It is deeper, it's only, I don't think it was significantly larger than the other pipe. It is concrete, which makes it look much larger, and it's got aprons.
It was 18 inches. That's a lot.
So the elevation, so now we're talking about the elevation of the culvert. And so the previous culvert virtually was at the bottom of the pavement, right? And so
Yeah.
we want to make sure we have a little bit more cover over that, so it doesn't break up over the top of the roadway. And so, being that there's a public drainage utility easement there, we're able to lower that culvert and get a little bit more cover over the roadway to protect the integrity of the surface of the roadway. So Public Works isn't correcting issues that exist there, and that's why some of the issues were there. We depressed that culvert a little bit, and in turn had to grade out into the drainage and utility easement that happened to go between Mr. Babbitt's property and his neighbor, Dan, I can't remember the.
Lander.
Yeah, so,
Okay, okay.
but
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So, all right, who else would like to come up during the public hearing and address? Come on up, state your name and your address.
Here, Newman, 26,400 Parcel Avenue. I guess this is my first time going through this, so I didn't really understand what an assessment was. My impression was it was going to be how much you owe and, that butts up to the road. But I got told today that it was actually by units. I understand that better now, but as far as the construction itself, I gotta say, and a lot of my neighbors said that too, they weren't really informed of what was happening on Parcel Avenue. There were times where for 3 weeks nobody was there, but all the equipment was there, like all day. My mailbox, for example, got cut down quite a bit, so I can hardly reach out the car now. The street sign got moved over to the other side of the road, which blends really nicely in with the trees, so you can't really see the road side. But also, they parked, like, I guess, I live on a trail, I suppose, whatever you wanna call it, driveway, trail.
You have a long driveway.
Well, it's the city's driveway, I share it though.
Okay.
But I guess the construction workers parked there thinking it was the trail. So I couldn't get out in the morning or at night, not go in. So I asked them quite a few times to move actually. So yeah, I just kinda wanted to bring those things up, but then too, where they did the road really nicely now, but now when I go into the city's trail or my driveway, there's a little bump now, which wasn't there prior, so I'm wondering if they're gonna, I need to fix that or make it smooth, so. Cause if I have somebody come in to shovel snow, they're gonna rip up the snow
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
It's gonna be a mess.
Yeah.
But then too, in regards to the trail, there's quite a few people that walk there. I took the time this fall to clean up all the leaves and cut the branches and stuff. I'm not sure who's responsible for that. There's quite a few dead trees there. I know we had emailed back in March, I think.
April, March, yeah.
Somewhere around there to get somebody out there and clean it up. It hasn't been done. There's no trail lighting, there's no street lights. It gets really dark for the people walking there. And it's kind of scary for me having flashlights going around my house.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were just a few points I wanted to make.
Okay, thank you. And just a real quick question, Ms. Newman. Were you able to get, when the workers were there, were you able to call City Hall and call up here just to help,
I
so we
never
could
did.
help you
I'm
work?
usually not a complainer. I just call,
Yeah.
ask them to move the car so I could get out with
Okay.
them. But
Okay, and was Mr. Linwood helpful
Oh,
discussing?
absolutely.
Okay, good deal.
Absolutely.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, well, we do appreciate you coming up, and really anytime, just call City Hall with any questions. It's not complaining. We can't fix what we don't know,
Well, right.
Yeah. so.
There was a comment that was made related to something that's kind of maybe still outstanding. If I could, Rob, do you have her contact information? I do. Okay, we'll have our inspector in touch with you and kind of, you can maybe just point out to him what is concerning you, and we can have the contractor address that, so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else? Steve, come on up, state your name. I mean, I just said your first name, but.
It's kind of a general question. Steve Schroeder, 2617 Boulevard Drive. My question, I guess, is, the street was narrow, I guess, in my opinion, to begin with, because a bunch of people that park at the house, I got kids at home, parked on the street all the time, and the street's narrow to begin with, people are driving by, and that stretch, for whatever reason, seemed like a racetrack. But I guess my question to you is, and you stated it earlier, was you said, well, the roads are approximately the same width. And I guess my question is when you guys write your specs and they're bidding the project, don't you give them some parameters, or do you just leave it arbitrary for the contractor to make it as wide as they want or as wide as they think it needs to be? Because we measured, it was 24 feet prior to, and now it's 22 feet. And in fact, when we get to 262nd, it's only 21 feet wide. And I'm just very concerned about anybody parking on streets, emergency vehicles getting through, all those kinds of things. And I would think that when you're pulling, an engineer, and I work for an engineering firm, we write specs, and those are what you price and bid on. And it just seems like it maybe a little loosey-goosey about, well, it can be 22 feet or 24, 23, or whatever the contractor wants. And I guess find that, I don't know, I just don't know that in my eyes, is an acceptable answer. And I guess that's all I have. You know, it is what it is. I like the road, but I just think that it's a lot narrower. In fact, I had my mailbox moved because it was too far away. We were driving on the grass to get to my mailbox.
Yeah, okay.
And I can
Sure,
certainly
so-
address that, because that is absolutely not what had taken place. And so we had very detailed specifications and plans, and it was staked according to what was designed on the plans for them to construct. And so it absolutely was not loosey-goosey. And I can maybe see why you might think that, and not being, you know, close to the project. And so I'm not being critical of that assessment, because I can see where maybe that was this, you know, how you might view that. But it certainly was not, that certainly was not the case. I think your property may be one that the curve, why it's pulled away is a little bit where we actually modified the horizontal curve a little bit. And it may have had to move your driveway mailbox because of that. I think that was part of, I'm not certain, but I'm pretty confident that that probably is the location where that had taken place, but, pardon me?
We don't have any curbs.
No, curve.
Curve.
Oh, curb.
Curve, I'm sorry, curve. But I can appreciate your comment, but it certainly was not the case.
I mean, I just know when you were giving the slide, you said, you know, some of the streets were 24, 23, and some ended up at 22. I guess I don't know if there's some hard, you know, fast, you know, specification for getting, you know, what should be the minimum road width.
Right.
And, you know what I mean? I'm just going off of what you
That's
were
what-
giving the slide, so I wasn't
Yep.
even gonna get up and speak when you
Yep.
said that.
So when I say it ended up, it wasn't like the contractor just did it and it ended up that way. So I could have been maybe a little bit more concise, right, on that. And so when we designed it, right, we evaluated what the street widths, what some of the requirements were for inslopes on ditches, and we didn't want to make it necessarily wide or even match it, especially if we were raising. And so we picked a width at various locations, tried to maintain consistency. Most of our areas are, you know, 22 feet width, and these types of neighborhoods, it's not our current road standard. Our current road standard is 28 feet in width. We certainly can't accommodate or fit that within our section, but all of our roadways are designed to a certain width and staked accordingly. And so I probably didn't state it as clearly as I could have to led you to believe that it was willy-nilly, but it certainly was not the case. But
Steve, does that help?
It does. I just wanted to ask the question.
Yeah.
Because I knew the street width was 4, and then we measured it after. And it was clearly narrow. I mean, I look at my mailbox and the mail person, I literally had to drive on the grass with the entire mailbox. So it's like, and the road was fairly narrow to begin with. And I just have a concern about, you know, emergency vehicles, people parked on the street. I just don't want it to be an issue down the road.
Right. Yeah, we appreciate that. All right, thank you. Is there anyone else? Please come on up and state your name.
Scott Knott, live at 40640. All I wanna know is where do I send the check?
Oh, well, that's pretty easy, Scott.
Just keeping it simple.
Yeah. All right,
So
Mr. Linwood.
You can drop one off here, you can send it to the city of Wyoming, and it's PO Box 188. I can give you that information.
Yeah.
it's payable to the city of Wyoming.
But it's payable, you know, and I have to-
You're right on the memo that it's for the assessment, or are you just gonna know because of the?
It is on the letter, but that's perfectly, because I
Okay.
can do this too, that's not a problem.
Perfect. Scott, are you a graduate at Forest Lake?
Yep,
Yep.
yeah, I
Okay.
went to school with you.
Yeah, all right. I was just, I thought so, but I,
No,
needed
you're
to.
not hallucinating.
Oh, okay, sounds good. Well, it's good to see you.
Yeah,
All right,
awesome.
all right. Thank you.
Send it there.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? No? All right, then we are going, we need to approve that, don't we?
Need a motion to go. into
Motion,
that public hearing.
go out of that, but then we have to go back in for number 3?
We'll open a new one.
Separate.
We'll open a new one. Again, you'd think I know this. Okay, so we need a motion to go out of the public hearing and back into regular session.
So moved.
Moved by Member Onstead. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Luker. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are now back into regular session. We need council, I'm going to read this and then council can ask any questions. To consider Resolution 2111-107, a resolution adopting assessments for the 2021 street improvement project. So before we go to vote, do we have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay,
On the second challenge, are we going to reach out to the homeowner to discuss deferments or ways to ease her burden?
Sure, we certainly can, and I'm hopeful that with some clarification in regards to that amount, I know I talked that I'd maybe just explain that that will not be the total amount due. One thing in regards to the state statute that our city attorney, Mr. Luden, pointed out that in regards to that, we can take an analysis of the financial hardship, but she does not meet criteria due that she's 62 years old and not 65 years old.
okay.
We can certainly inquire to see if she can satisfy the hardship in another way, but under the statute, she does not meet the age requirement.
So, but we will certainly reach out to her and explain, I guess, I've left a few different messages for the individual, just trying to explain too how the assessment process works, but if she understands how that works, we'll certainly look at ways if she can provide income information, or we can be helpful in that sense.
Thank
All
you.
right. So, just so we understand, council members will not be reaching out to her, staff and Mr. Lunan will need to.
Messages in right now, hopefully
Okay.
I'll keep trying.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, if there are no other comments or questions, we need a motion to approve Resolution 2111-107, a resolution adopting assessments for the 2021 street improvement project. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Luker. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. We now will move on to number 3 on our agenda, but we will need to open up a public hearing again. I am going to read 3 and then go into public hearing. Is that fine? Am I good with that? Okay. To consider Resolution 2111-108, a resolution approving assessments for parcel 21.10605.00 for the 2008 Wyoming Street and utility improvements on 257th Street. So with that, we need a motion to go into the public hearing, please.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Onstad. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Luker. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are in public hearing. All right. You want to start with that?
Sure, I can start out. Mayor, members of the council, this is, you are familiar, I think, with this. We obviously called, excuse me, for the public hearing at our first meeting in October of this year. This particular public hearing is for a parcel that was inclusionary on our 2008 street improvement and utility project on 257th Street. It is indicated in your packet that it is near that south side of 257th. The original creation of this road was largely for the creation and construction of what was at the time Accent Building, that 100,000 square foot building now, which is Rosenbauer. Since then, we have had the addition of DeVita Dialysis on the very east side of that road, and then we have obviously the first Himes Lake Villas, which is the 33 villa-style homes, and now the second edition of Himes Lake Villas, which is the 34 units of those homes. This property has been in forfeiture and in sheriff's sale approximately since 2017, available to purchase, but with that being said, that there was outstanding assessments on this parcel. On September 15th, 2021, the Chisago County Auditor conducted a sheriff's sale where the property in discussion tonight was purchased for $5,047.20. With the knowledge on the sheriff's sale and the materials for the sheriff's sale, with the knowledge if anyone inquires with the city, and also stated by the county auditor that there was an outstanding assessment amount of $183,456.46. So you can see within the memo there is a breakdown of the sale price, some of the county admin costs, and then less those special assessments for the amount to be a portion of $178,686.90. When the city did the improvements on 257th Street, the street and utility project, we did have to take out bond for construction of that road. Those bonds we started to make payment on in 2010, and those do go until 2025 over a 15-year term. We are still paying on those bonds as we are speaking here. Annually, we have had some of the other properties sold, but they have paid off those assessment components in full when they have sold. At this point, we have had the sale, so the city started the reassessment process, which is necessary to have that put on that parcel. So tonight, we are having a public hearing and to see if it's at the council's discretion to put that $178,686.90 back on that parcel. You have received, I'm not sure if there's anyone here to represent, represented from that group, but you have received an email in front of you from one of the owners tonight in regards to that property. And I think that's all I have, and I can certainly stand for questions. And then Mayor, you have an opportunity. I'm not sure if there's anyone in the crowd, but we obviously want to ask if anyone would like to speak on this.
Yeah, I'll do that first. Is there anybody here who would like to speak to this? Come on up and state your name, please.
Edward Severson, 21 Maple, St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm here on behalf of the 257 land holdings. In reference to the $178,686.90, we were asking for, our objection was not to the amount. Our objection would be just the timing of it, and we respectfully request 60 days to make the city whole on that amount.
Okay, all right, questions? Okay,
I do have a question.
okay.
Mr. Linwood, how long has this property owner had to come up with everything required?
I'm sorry, Councilmember, as far as,
I mean, how long has this property, the gentleman who bought, or the group who bought the property, known that they would have to,
Pay assessment?
pay assessments?
it was explained in the actual brochure at the sheriff's sale that there was the outstanding assessment. That was part of the materials. It's my understanding from the county auditor that she did make that clear during the actual sale that there were outstanding assessments. We did not have any conversations prior to the sale with the individuals who did purchase it. I know that we did receive probably up to a dozen inquiries between myself and Mr. Weck about potential developers or people interested in the property, but then shared that information in regards to the outstanding assessments. And it would be the city's intent, based on how we have acted on the other properties, that we would move forward with an assessment on that property,
Okay.
or the outstanding assessment, excuse me.
All right, so if it's been explained that the assessment's due upon sale, basically.
Well, in this instance, it's not necessarily because it came from public ownership to private ownership. So
Okay.
it's we're issuing now, after the public hearing, we'll do the reassessment, and then pursuant to the reassessment resolution, it's due 30 days. Every party that was inquiring or interested in buying the property was notified that the assessment would be due, but it's not a private sale. It came out of
Okay.
public ownership, so it's slightly different.
How long is this gonna take?
What,
They have 30 days. If the council were to, I know that the owner is asking for an extension. If the council were to pass the resolution presented to you, they have 30 days to pay that assessment in
Okay.
full.
What I don't understand is, if you know you have an assessment and it has to be paid, why do you need a 60-day extension to assess the site and development potential? If you found that there is no development potential, are you going to get rid of the property or not pay the assessment?
If I could back up just a little bit, let's talk about the sale day at the county. Their indication is that on their brochure, it's the amount of assessment that has basically been removed from the sale amount. And they clearly state that the city could reenact that, if they so choose, they could in fact put it back on. And then, since then, we've been working diligently, working through our due diligence and working through those items. Our view was that it is part of the sale price, yes. We want to be, it's our fair share of that property wouldn't be a property if it didn't have a road leading to it. And it's just at this time, things are going very well. Our soil delineation report is done. We're ready to prepare to request to have it viewed. The survey is scheduled, and the city admin staff did a tremendous job. They've already turned around, the deed has already been delivered, and right now, we're working on title. So things are in place, and so that's why I'm here this evening to ask for that 60-day window. Or,
I don't know, I mean, to me, it's, you have the land, pay the assessment, because we've been paying the bonds for how, a long, long time.
and I believe this, and I completely understand your point, and I'm just clearly stating what was stated to us is that, the city, if they so choose, will put it back on. But you bring up a very good point, and I'm not disagreeing with you whatsoever.
It's probably appropriate, I think, there are cases, so it was probably the way it was communicated by the county that we could, I think that would say that, because they don't want to speak for because there's obviously different cities and different entities on that process, but I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that it might have been stated that we could, but it was certainly in print there of the amount removed, and that $183,000 was on that brochure with the property, so we're hopeful of inquiries in situations like this.
Were you able to call the city ahead of time, as Mr. Linwood had stated, that there were quite a few phone calls, not only to himself but also to Mr. Weck? So were you able to call, or?
I did not. It was, the sale was through, to me, it kind of felt like a horse in the cart situation, and it just, through the state, purchasing from the state, but adjudicated through the county. I went one step at a time, because it just got to be kind of a hypothetical of if it would or wouldn't. My eyes were on it that if you're gonna be part of the community, you wanna, that certainly would be no way to view being part of the community, saying that we don't wanna be paying our fair share.
Yeah.
That's certainly not the case. We're just asking, just push it to the right an extra 30 days.
Okay, and just a couple more questions. Do you have other developments that you've done before in cities? I don't know if you're a big company, I don't know if you're a smaller company, but have you bought other forfeiture property before in other cities and have asked this?
Development-wise, yes, and this is because of the title issues in the past. We haven't seen it through, but once we get over this 60-day piece, everything's gonna be smooth, and we look forward to working.
And my last question is this: how does that extra 30 days help you? Because the money's due, whether it's 30 days or 60 days, how does that additional 30 days get you an extension? Because I do worry a little bit about verbiage on the email, which draws a little bit of concern, and that being we will have a better idea what is feasible and work with the city to pay the assessment. So if I were to read into this, to me it's more like you want to see if you're going to keep it or not. So my question is that having that additional 30 days, what does that do for you?
I wasn't sure on the timing of that email, if that, of the level of concern going into that. I don't know if that was before the deed.
It was on Monday, we received that email. Yep.
Yeah.
To push things up to the right, gives us a little bit more time just to clear up that title. And from a financial picture, we don't want to work through things and come up with a number that if there's even more numbers, we don't want to approach a project on our heels right from the start. We have that allocated, 60 days out, we have that, and be able to work through the other due diligence to make sure that there isn't anything else out there. We're just trying to proceed with abundance of caution.
Mm-hmm. So are you an attorney for them, or are you part owner of this development?
I am not. Administrative assistant, I'm more into compliance, more after the fact than before the fact, I guess.
Yes,
Mayor,
Mr. Wack.
Council members, in this email I talked about, they filed a wetland delineation report with the city. They initially filed it with the county, so that's the wrong place to send it to. The email was sent on November 1st at 11:14. I responded at noon, said that we're the correct jurisdiction, here's our application form. They responded back that they would get it to us. We have not received it. On the wetland delineations, for the review of them, there is no review from October 15th to May 15th because the growing season has ended.
Yeah.
So even if we received the application today, we wouldn't be able to act on it until next May.
Okay.
So that, the wetland delineation, although it's probably accurate, it's not gonna be approved until that time.
So knowing what I know from the planning commission of being on it for 5 years, pretty hard to kind of do that delineation because of the time of year, exactly what you said, right? So, okay, all right. Okay, any other questions?
The delay, does it cost the city anything? Because we're currently paying on that amount.
Annually, we're paying we're levying for the assessment amounts on those properties that we haven't received, so that's built into our budget right now, any of those, but potentially the delay doesn't it doesn't hurt us. If we were to receive a payment, it might be something that we could look at our 2022 budget and potentially look at a lessening of that necessary levy amount to pay those assessments that we haven't been receiving on those properties in tax forfeiture.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to come up and speak regarding this? If not, we need a motion to go out of the public hearing and back into a regular scheduled meeting. Do I have a motion to go into regular meeting?
So moved.
Motion to approve by member Onstead. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by member Luger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are back into regular session. All right, so I will, any questions to staff regarding this? No? Okay, so we are gonna need a motion to approve Resolution 2111-108, a resolution approving assessments for parcel 21.10605.00 for the 2008 Wyoming Street and Utility Improvement 257th Street. And just to be clear, this is on the 30-day payment of. So, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by member Yeager. Do we have a second? Do we have a second? I will second that. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. Thank you. All right, we're gonna move on to the consent agenda. It's gonna go faster now, I promise, for those who are needing some coffee. All right, consent agenda number 4, 5, and 6. Does anybody wish to pull an item from the consent agenda? Hearing nothing, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda 4, 5, and 6?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by member Luger. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by member Onstead. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So approved. Acknowledge of receipts of reports of officers, boards, commissions, and department heads, number 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Does anyone wish to pull a report for further discussion? Hearing nothing, we'll move on to new business, number 12. To consider resolution 21-11-109, a resolution approving the preliminary plat D.21.011 Adlin Acres third plat at Pioneer Road and Iris Avenue by applicant Perry Adlin, Peter Adlin, and Paul Adlin. Property ID number 21.10482.00. Mr. Weck?
Madam Mayor and council members, this is a larger parcel that when Pioneer Road went through, it divided it. By platting it, that would allow them to sell the lot on the south side of Pioneer Road. They can't do that now without platting it. The north side, block 1, has a current homestead and the old farmhouse on it. They're probably gonna replat that at some point in the future, but right now, that's already a unbuildable lot. Built and has been built on the lot, I'm sorry. Planning Commission is recommending approval. One of the one condition was that the city attorney shall state whether fee simple title to the platted property is in the names of the subdividers. That just got finished this morning, so that condition has already been been met. So, again, the planning commission is recommending approval of the preliminary plat, but now with no conditions.
Okay, all right. Council, any questions? We'll start with Member Yeager.
This is just for subdividing the land, no houses or anything planned?
I don't know if they have a buyer for that south lot yet, but eventually there would be a house built on that southern lot.
Okay, but not at the time, not at this
I
moment?
have not received an application, no.
And there's no timeline for this?
You'd have to ask the Adlins that.
Okay.
But once the plat is approved, they could sell it and it could be built on
Right.
immediately.
And this is not a condition of Hunter's Hill, not a condition, continuation?
No, it's actually separated by some other parcels. Eventually, it may all tie together.
Yeah, that's, because when I looked at the map, it looked like it could come down, tie together, so I
Yes.
didn't know if this was separate or,
At this time, it's separate. When they decide to replat Block 1, then they'll show how they're gonna make that connection.
okay. And then could Mr. Lunan explain what the condition was? Because I'm like, who else's name would be on the title?
We've had applicants, sometimes will make an application prior to taking title of the property or something to that regard, so we want to ensure that the correct owner is titled. And so we had received an attorney report from their attorney to that regard. I had asked for just the confirming documentation, which we received on Monday and I reviewed, and so we have confirmed. But occasionally, the party making the application is not always the same party as title. We just want to ensure that that's uniform.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Member Onstad?
No questions.
Member Luger?
No questions.
And I have no questions either. We need a motion to approve Resolution 21-11-109, resolution approving preliminary plat D.21-001. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Onstad. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Luger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Number 13, to consider Resolution 2111-110, a resolution approving the final plat D-21-012, Adlin Acres Third Plat at Pioneer Road and Iris Avenue by applicant Perry Adlin, Peter Adlin, and Paul Adlin. Property ID number 21.10482.00. Mr. Weck?
Madam Mayor and council members, since there are no public improvements required for this, they don't need to build a road, they don't need to do stormwater, and actually, Pioneer Road is under an easement to the city with the plat going through, it'll actually be dedicated as public right-of-way. So, again, the planning commission is recommending approval of the final plat.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council? Member Onstad?
No questions.
Member Luger?
No questions.
Member Yeager?
No questions.
And I have no questions. We need a motion to approve Resolution 21-11-110, a resolution approving the final plat D-21-012. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Member Onstad. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Luger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Number 14, to consider Resolution 21-11-111, a resolution approving Site Plan SP-21-004, Hallberg, Bingham property location, Forest Boulevard, County Road 30 for the applicant Advanced Engineering Concepts, and prospective owner Hallberg Inc., Austin Hallberg, current owner Chisago County EDA, and City of Wyoming EDA, property ID number 21.00006.00. Mr. Linwood or Mr. Weck?
Mr. Weck?
I can start, I guess.
Or you can start, yes, certainly.
The parcel is the Bingham property, so I think there's a purchase agreement between the EDA and Hallberg Inc. to purchase the property. They have submitted a site plan application. Tonight's application only has to do with the first phase of it. The second phase would come later, but it's a 2-unit tenant as an industrial use. The staff recommendation and the planning commission recommendations vary in that in the staff recommendation, number 1, texture clad panels or stainless steel wall panels designed with a stucco finish. I won't go through the whole thing, but it doesn't necessarily comply with the city's ordinance as far as for Class 1 and Class 2 materials. The other 2 conditions from the staff, the cross-access agreement will be required to access to the Phase 2 property. The Bingham property is between County Road 30 and Interstate 35. By our ordinance, both of those roads qualify as road frontage for creating a lot. But obviously, they're not gonna be able to get access from I-35. And at County Road 30, there's the trail, which is also, they may be able to cross it at some point in the future. But in this case, the driveway will be built to city specs for a road, and there'll be an access agreement so that we can get to the second part of it. So that's why that cross-access agreement is in there. There were some engineering comments on the stormwater. Those will need to be addressed also. At the end, with the planning commission recommendation, city staff is adding an additional condition that Hallberg Inc. shall complete the purchase of the property from the Chisago County EDA and City of Wyoming EDA before any work on the site will be allowed to begin. The planning commission, during public hearing and testimony, discussed the texture clad panels, decided that because of how quickly materials are changing, that it meets the intent of the code. And then they're also talking about relooking at the architectural standards. We just looked at them 4 or 5 years ago, and already things are changing. So their recommendation is just the cross-access agreement and the engineering comments, and then the additional staff comment about the purchase of the property.
Okay, Mr. Linwood, do you have any other comments?
No, just I guess as far as the backside on this is in regards to Mr. Weck stated that this is right now in a purchase agreement between the Hallberg Inc. and then the City of Wyoming EDA and the Chisago County HRA EDA. This is essentially the last step contingent for the closing of that. If this were to move forward and be approved, it would have a closing in the next couple weeks for the property that the city owned.
Okay. Mr. Hallberg is here. Austin, do you have anything you want to say about the building, or you understood the planning commission and not quite fitting into city code right now, but that they're planning? Okay, so you're understood on that, right? Okay. All right. All right, I have no questions. Member Luger?
No questions.
Member Onstad?
No questions.
Member Yeager?
I have a few questions. Is the proposed material the same as what's going on the RV storage?
Yes, it is the same material.
So what I don't understand, why is it okay up there and not okay down here?
Part of it was the industrial use, and I think part of it also, again, at the last one, the city council made the planning commission made the decision to allow that material. The ordinance hasn't changed, so staff recommendation is still based on the ordinance.
Okay, so comes back to it's still okay?
That's at the determination of the city council.
Okay, oh, okay.
Because it would meet the intent of the code as one of the options of the materials. So.
Okay. Okay, and I've never seen, never been asked to approve a site plan before the property is sold. Is this usual to approve a site plan before the closing date?
There have been, it's typically more with developments where the current property owner holds it and a developer comes in and says, we'd like to buy it, but we want to make sure we get through the preliminary plat process before we actually pay you for it. So they're usually like a contingency to allow that to happen.
Okay.
The site plan reviews we've done lately have been applicant owned. There was one 5 or 6, 7 years ago on the old Many property that the person that was looking at turning that into a trucking.
I remember that one.
Yeah, they did not own it at that time. So it was again the same thing. We had the owner of the property had to sign off on the application. So as we were talking earlier with the final plat and fee simple title, they have to show that the actual owner knows what they're wanting to do to it. So in this case, the owners being the county and the city, and there's a purchase agreement, we do know that.
Oh, okay. Do you have a firm closing date for this?
The transaction is set to close next week, next Wednesday, is what we have. Well, we have next Friday, but I believe the intent is we're gonna close on or before next Friday. I think through discussions, and we'll probably talk, depending on what the council does here, potentially about closing next Wednesday. This really is the last piece. This is the end of the due diligence period, and as Mr. Weck said, it's not uncommon that that's why there's a condition that they have to close on, otherwise this doesn't go forward.
And is there a developer's agreement in place? Because I believe that was a condition of the purchase agreement?
So the condition of the purchase agreement is restrictive covenant, so there's not
Oh.
a full development agreement, and the project as it stands right now wouldn't necessarily require a full development agreement. That would be at the purview of the council and the city's authority. However, because there's just gonna be, well, there's two phases, two buildings being put out there. What the EDA negotiations with the purchaser, there's restrictive covenants that have been placed on the property restricting what can be built out there, what the use can be out there, but not a full-blown development agreement that would guide the development of the site.
Okay, because when I read through the purchase agreement, I thought I saw a developer's agreement, and I thought there was, I saw in like the EDA votes, it wasn't a unanimous vote, so that's
Correct,
why I asked.
there was initial discussions on the initial draft of the agreement, about developer agreement, through discussions with what the project was going to be and the restrictions that the majority of the EDA was seeking. It was amended at a future EDA meeting to be restrictive covenant, which also set then the closing date for November, middle of this month.
Okay, cool, thanks.
All right, so we need a motion to approve Resolution 21-11-111, a resolution approving site plan SP-21-004, Hallberg Bingham property location. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Luger. I'll make that second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, so approved. Before we go on to 15, it is getting kind of late. There's still a lot of people that probably are done listening to the rest of our meeting. Number 15 is to consider and discuss design considerations for the 2022 East Viking Boulevard Improvement Project. If you would like to go home and not listen to number 15, can we just take like a 5-minute break if people want to clear out? Is that okay? Yeah, let's just do that in case you want to get out of here. So I know it's a long night. So yeah, we'll talk tomorrow.